Holy God, it is Friday. It is the end of a long week, and we are tired. We are also scared. We are afraid that we won't be able to follow your Son, follow you any further. We are afraid that, like Judas, we have somehow in small ways betrayed him, betrayed you. And like Peter, denied him, denied you with our words and with our actions. The sun has gone down now, and we can see nothing but darkness. So we ask you to come. Remind us of your promises of old. Come and strengthen our faith. Give us the courage to stand at the foot of the cross and to hold on through the darkness of this night. Amen. Well, it has been a long week, part of a long month, which has been part of a very long year. I remember standing here in this pulpit a year ago, reflecting with you on the shadow of death. And although we have walked through that valley as a congregation, we find as we return again to Good Friday this evening, the shadow of death continues to fall over us, doesn't it? Because we as human beings, as living organisms that are finite and fragile, we live out our lives in the shadow of death, don't we? Along with the rest of creation. And so it is not surprising that we find it difficult to come to the foot of the cross, to stay there, and to look up at our weakness, our brokenness, our sin, hanging there for all the world to see. In an article for the Christian Century back in March of 1998, the Reverend Barbara Brown Taylor reflected on this passage from John by writing, "There are many ways to tell the story of what happened on Good Friday. According to the writer of John, it involved a collision between religion and politics. Jesus stood at the center of the stage like a mirror, in which all those around him saw themselves clearly for who they were. He upset those in charge at the courthouse and also at the temple. He offered himself as a mirror that they could see themselves in, and they were so appalled by what they saw that they smashed it. They smashed him in every way that they could." I think Reverend Taylor is correct in her assessment. And that image of Jesus as a smashed mirror reminded me of a scene from one of my favorite movies. In Bull Durham, Kevin Costner plays a grizzled veteran baseball player whose dreams of making it to the major leagues have nearly vanished, but whose experience as a proven catcher helps to groom a young, talented pitcher named Newt LaRouche. Now, in this pivotal scene toward the end of the film, Costner's character, Crash Davis, is playing billiards in a worn-down pool hall owned by a former teammate. And he is drowning his regrets of a lost career in strong liquor. In walks the young phenom Nuke, who has just been called up to play in the majors. But instead of being excited for Nuke, Crash is bitter. he himself has missed out on. All of the promise of a future lost. And so, in his frustration, Crash throws a cue ball at Nuke, but misses badly and only succeeds in shattering a mirror on the wall. It is the symbolism in that scene that struck me, because like Herod and Pilate and the religious leaders of Jesus' day, Costner's character can't stand the reflection that he sees in the mirror. And so he shatters it. I wonder, how do we react when confronted by the reality check that is Jesus the Christ? Are we able to accept our shortcomings, our limitations, our failings, our need for God's grace, like Mary, or Nicodemus, or Joseph of Arimathea, and so find ourselves at the foot of the cross, penitent and grieving? Or do we hide from Jesus, living in denial of who we are and what we need, like Peter? I wonder, do we actively work against Jesus because we are so sure that we know better how Jesus ought to act, just like Judas thought? Do we cast stones and shout for a more agreeable alternative? Someone we would choose, like Barabbas. Our voices screaming out, "Crucify him!" in the crowd. Or are we so afraid of losing worldly power or the perception of control that we allow the crowds, we allow others, we allow our own fear to dictate Jesus' fate? And so the perfect mirror is shattered. At the end of her article, Reverend Taylor writes, "I remember being at a retreat once where the leader asked us to think of someone who represented Christ in our lives. When it came time to share our answers, one woman stood up and said, 'I had to think long and hard about this one. I kept thinking to myself, who is it who told me the truth about myself so clearly that I wanted to kill them for it?' According to John, Jesus died because he told the truth to everyone he met. He was the truth, a perfect mirror in which people saw themselves in God's own light." My friends, tonight is Good Friday. It is the night of broken hopes and broken dreams. It is a night where we are forced to face our own mortality and recognize our utter dependence upon God. As your pastor, I would love nothing more than to end tonight by extolling God's power to pick up all of the pieces and create a beautiful mosaic out of our broken shards, out of our broken lives. But it is not yet Easter. It is still just Friday. And so I must, with you, hang my head in shame and walk out in darkness over the broken pieces